Clean it like riding, but I know that they ain't. Ride or die. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.
Divine command theory, right? Like goodness is dependent on God's commands, right? In Craig's model, it seems to me like goodness depends on God's nature, right? And so maybe you're happy with that. Maybe that aligns better with like your theist model or whatever. But like it is, I agree that's different, but it also feels like roughly under the second horn heading, right?
Yeah,
Meaning goodness is dependent on the one thing and not the other way around, or no
yeah.
other
Well,
third
and
horn is
that's
possible.
fine because like I think for the most part, every Christian is going to deny is that goodness is dependent upon some kind of like Platonic ideal that is in some way separate from God. Like goodness just exists platonically out there apart from God. He just repeats what is the case. Like, yeah, that he's going to deny that because we are arguing that God is that Platonic ideal, not that he's separate from it. So we're going to grab hold of that second horn. At least, right? James has his own way of going about that. He has a third horn. I don't know that I fully
I
understand it,
take
but
William Lane Craig's position that the Euthyphro Dilemma is not just this two horns that atheists insist that there's actually a third horn, and William Lane Craig ties that to God's nature, and then he establishes the good from that, which is similar to what you're arguing, Jesse. When they try to force you into one of the two horns, it's a way that one horn makes the commandments of God seem arbitrary, just because like divine command theory, and then the other one seems to violate the fact that they are good because it's coming from God's nature anyway. So I don't know why anybody would try to want to even take either one of those fake horns.
Yeah, but look, I've said that one opens up a second order Euthyphro. Right? Just if an action is by asking, is killing babies wrong because it doesn't conform to God's nature? Or does God's nature not conform to killing babies because killing
both.
babies is wrong?
I don't
Both.
even know
Both?
what it means to say that God's, these things are in conformity with God's nature. I mean, I think this requires, I think,
Yeah, I do actually agree with
nonsense
that.
notions of nature.
Look, friction. It's we've been going over this for a while. It's very basic, right? Like God's nature is going to be a morally definable something. Okay,
A
so morally
morally
definable
definable
what
something.
is it? That is correct. It's literally what I said. Morally definable something. What is it morally defined as? Good or evil? Because there's morality is a binary. Okay, so give a classification to it. You pick.
Billy, would you put on your
And
nachos?
I think
Yeah,
what
yes.
Detroit is saying, right,
this
is
isn't
that
even
it's not
relevant to
clear
what I
what
was saying, so I don't know what he's talking about.
like
Well, I don't know
Detroit
what
is saying something like what does it mean to be conforming to God's nature? So, for example, right, like Danny actually pointed this out once. Like God is all knowing, right? He's omniscient, right? So, am I not in conformity with God's nature because I'm not omniscient? So, is it a moral failing on my
No, no,
part to
no,
not
no,
know
no, no,
everything?
because that's an issue of capacity or ability, not morality. Morality has its own question of capacity or ability, but not in ontological sense, right? Ontologically, God is omniscient. He possesses all knowledge, or he possesses all true propositions, right? But that is not to be conflated with moral disposition.
Okay, so there's a subset of his nature that we'll call his moral nature that we should be in conformity with.
Yeah, which does not mean just like the hard attributes of theology proper, say omniscience, timelessness, omnipresence, what have you.
Okay, but I mean, then I don't know, Detroit, you probably have a better question here.
I just still don't understand
I don't really
why.
think it's a waste of my time, frankly, but I just think it's a bunch of nonsense. I mean, we can talk about God, maybe you have some notion of good and you think God's satisfied with that. But when people start saying things like his nature is good or goodness, I think they're basically just gibbering. It's just nonsense. It doesn't mean anything.
So give us an explanation as to why that is gibberating friction.
Oh yeah, I'm not really interested in discussing this with you.
Yeah, I don't think you
But
actually have a reasonable response to that.
Can't you
of course
clear
I
Yeah,
up
do.
the
I
It's
don't,
just a
differences?
waste
I
of my
don't think,
time
I
to
don't think.
engage with
Well,
you.
here's the thing: you came on the stage, friction. This is the topic of the stage. Then you came on the stage to be a diva to tell us you didn't want to talk about the topic of the stage. So you decide if you would like to remove yourself from the stage, talk about the topic, or if I should remove you.
You can do what you want. I don't care.
All right, well, you're not productive, man. So, I mean, I don't know why you even care to give your opinion on the fact that you're confused if you're not willing to say why you're confused.
I'm
So,
not confused. I can give my
It's just
opinion.
like it's
oh
like
no, I
the,
think you're very
People don't
confused
want it.
because you're not willing to actually engage in this in the
Well, that's
subject.
fair. You're fair. You're
it's
free to
like
think
the little
that.
kid who comes into the room. I know I'm right. I know you're wrong, but I'm not going to tell you how. It's not worth my time. But I'm going to sit in the room and butt into the conversation.
I'm going to provide my
It's
opinion.
just
The
not
fact that there's
productive.
a certain conversation that I'm interested in having, that's just a fact about me. I'm sorry that you don't like that.
All
I
right,
don't.
this is
What do you want
stupid.
me to say?
Just kick him off the stage. He does. I don't. He's not even being helpful or productive in the conversation. He's just
Well,
saying,
we
I
asked him
don't know what
questions that
these
were not
people are
answered.
talking about. Why would we listen to them? Because I'm confused.
Well, the sad
Bye
thing is that like he's a
bye.
philosopher. He's a philosopher, which is the sad thing, and like he's still railing because he doesn't want to make another mistake, like making a positive statement for flat Earth again. So he's really desperately trying to avoid
This
that.
is the
Is that
funniest
who you
thing I've
debated?
ever
That
heard.
is who you debated on the flat Earth thing, wasn't it?
Reasonable.
That is who was arguing that flat Earth was more likely, more probable than the Exodus in concerning supernatural events. And then at
I
the
That's
didn't
Yeah,
know
same
that's
that
you
is
fun.
held
true.
that
But
view.
you are a
That's
flat earther, so no one should take you seriously.
and then
has he
at the
always
other,
held that view? Because I've never heard him say that.
he's not actually a flat earther. He made
Oh,
the statement that a flat Earth was more likely, and I'm still manning his position, than the supernatural events is what was laid out in the Exodus. And I said,
what
"Are
was
you
the
sure?"
But
And he doubled down on that on numerous occasions. Then he was on a stage with John Lee, and he was asked about the resurrection. John Lee said, "Which is more likely, the resurrection or flat Earth?" He said, "The resurrection." Which I say, kudos, good. The resurrection's more likely. But why would you say that this supernatural event, that like a resurrection, is likely, but yet the supernatural events in the Exodus are not more likely compared to flat Earth? And so
well,
then he
because he
switched
explained
to
that,
that
right? His
statement.
resurrection could be done naturally, right? Like
Yes,
wasn't that his?
that was his switch. That was where he switched to.
Right,
Yes, that was where he
he
landed.
answered your question, right? Like he didn't
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
reanimation
it's
is
just
conclusive.
possible. What we're
it's
saying.
just not like if you're a philosopher and you know that there's a mountain of evidence against flat Earth, and you know there's all this arguments for a round Earth, you should never put your foot in your mouth ever and make positive statements for flat Earth. That's my honest opinion.
Troyer, what just happened in the other room?
I
They were just
blocked
talking about it.
Jesse. I blocked Jesse and James, so now I'm blocking them.
What? Block JJ?
Jesse and James.
Yeah, I had a conversation
James.
with them, and I gave them an argument, and James just said like I was an idiot, that I was stupid, you know, and it was God's reasons, that argument, and they were just too dumb to understand. I mean, I can't chalk it to anything else.
Or they were
And
smart
they were
enough
like,
not to
you
engage
know,
honestly.
yeah, they
Well,
were extremely motivated the whole time. It's just frustrating.
Right.
I've blocked James. He's a right
possible
now,
for
at least.
Christian theists. It's almost impossible for Christian theists to accept that just because their God is not likely to do anything evil doesn't mean that he never can. It's almost impossible for them to accept that. Like it's not enough for him to be doing good. He must have some sort of stricture that no other thinking mind and evidence has.
To people who say that goodness, moral value, is based in the gods. Socrates asks Euthyphro, do the gods will something because it is good, or is something good because the gods will it? If you say that the gods will something because it's good, then the good is independent of the gods. It's not dependent on them at all. But if you say that the good is whatever the gods will, then that seems to be an example of might makes right. They could have declared something totally different to be the good. And so it makes good and evil arbitrary, which seems wrong. And this dilemma is often pressed against those who believe that goodness and moral value is grounded by God. I think, however, that the Euthyphro dilemma is a false dilemma because there's a third alternative. It's not the case that God wills something because it is good, nor is it the case that something is good just because God wills it. Rather, God wills something because He is good. That is to say, it is God's own nature which determines what is the good. God is by nature essentially compassionate, just, fair, kind, loving, and so forth. And because He is good, His commandments to us reflect necessarily His nature. And therefore, the commandments of God and our moral duties are rooted in God's essence. They are not arbitrary. They are rooted in God Himself, but they aren't grounded in anything external to God. God is Himself the good, who is the source of our moral duty.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.